I want to show you this corner here, because this corner is probably where Sappohannokan was. That's what we believe when we were digging around in the old landfill of this area. And Sappohannokan was an old Lenape trading post. So it would have been right around this corner right now where we are, in the corner of Washington Street and Gansevoort. And actually, as this street, hey Anna Maria, as Gansevoort heads in this direction, heading east, that would have been where the trail, the Lenape trail from the trading post would have been heading off to. So it's important to just mention those guys because they were the first ones here. Now, before we head up into the High Line itself, just a quick look over here, and we've got the Whitney Museum. It's worth mentioning the Whitney Museum because the Whitney Museum is part of the larger story of the High Line as the High Line, not as the West Side Elevated Train Platform, which is what it was originally called back in the 1930s when it was built. The High Line, which is this amazing park that we have today, is something else, and it was part of also this Whitney Museum story because it changes this neighborhood, the meatpacking district, which had become really run down and somewhat dangerous by the 1980s, 90s, probably even in late 70s. There was already some of an issue here. And the Whitney coming and moving down here in 2015 really put the seal of approval on this neighborhood to say it was doing well and it was back. It's a Renzo Piano building, and it's originally, the original Whitney was up on the Upper East Side. It was endowed by none other than Gertrude Vanderbilt, important name for us guys, Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. And she was an artist herself. She was a sculptor, an American sculptor. And what she did was buy lots of the artwork of her friends at one point. She was super wealthy, being the great-granddaughter of Cornelius Vanderbilt, often known as the Commodore, because Cornelius is of great New York fame and a very important figure in the railroads, which we're going to be talking about. Cornelius didn't get a start in the railroads. His idea to make money to begin with was to have a boat that would sail from Staten Island to Manhattan Island. And he would have the boat leave at regular times. Before that, the boat would leave just like when it was full. But Vanderbilt was the first guy that said, no, let's have a schedule. I bet people will show up more often if they know when the boat's gonna go. He was right, it worked. He ended up leaving the sloop sailing business and diversifying into the steamboat business, which Robert Fulton had invented and was allowing for more trade and transportation. And then eventually a different type of steam engine, he goes into trains, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. For right now, why don't we go into the High Line and make sure that my ticket is still gonna be good and they're not gonna tell me that I am entering too late right now. Eventbrite, opening up my ticket. So on the weekdays, you do not need a ticket to come into the High Line, but on the weekends, you do right now. And the whole idea is just to try to do crowd control, to make sure that you don't have too many people here at the same time. And that then means, whoop, here we go. Hi there, how are you today? I was supposed to be here at 3, but someone tried to grab my phone and now I'm here.
You're all set.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here today. All right. Okay, so, right, Whitney. And as we're walking up here, we can see actually some of the original row houses, which would have been built starting in the 1840s throughout until the beginning of the 1900s, let's say. And today, this whole area is very, very shishi, very haughty-taughty, very nice. It is not a troubled neighborhood, but you wouldn't have known that if you were here in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now, before we start walking along the actual High Line Park, which is this, sorry, Chris, what is the High Line? Nikki, that's a great question, and let me tell you what the High Line is. The High Line is where the old West Side elevated train platform was. And that elevated train platform, which ran up and down the west side of New York City, was no longer needed as things started to change in the way that shipping was done. And they instead took this defunct and derelict set of train tracks and they've converted it into a beautiful elongated park. Now, whereas most parks in New York City are designed to kind of hide the city, think about Central Park, think about Riverside Park, designed to kind of like English garden style, keep you from looking at the city the whole time. This park, it's based off of a French park in Paris, is this linear park that you walk along to be able to explore. Quick hellos, guys, quick hellos. Hello to Marta. And Santeria 78, thank you for being here. There. Now, I want to show you this vertical park. This linear park used to actually go straight further south, all the way down to a place called St. John's Park. And that was where there was a depot where trains would eventually end. St. John's Park today is close to where the entrance to the Holland Tunnel is, if that makes any sense to you. And what I want to show you really quick, just to prove that to you, because I know that you guys don't always believe me when I tell you stuff, is I want to show you this. Hopefully that's coming through in a second. Yep, all right. Do you guys have a picture on your screen now? Is there a picture there in front of you? I don't know if there is or not. But if you can see this old picture, which looks like a train line heading into a building itself, right? Okay, you see that? Let me see if I can now minimize this and just shift it to the side a little bit. Take a look. It's this building, in fact, right there in front of us. Well, you see that kind of like the green windows and the green tiling over there, right? Like this was the entrance into this building, all right? So, and you can understand that, then it makes sense because, whoop, come on, picture, let me get you out of here now. Okay, it makes sense because this is the old elevated train platform. So it would run directly down into that space. Now, why is this so important and so interesting? Well, the reason is that this solution, this elevated train platform, was the answer to a real problem that New York was facing between the 30s, the West 30s, down to all the way into Tribeca. And the issue was that the trains back in those days would actually run right along 10th Avenue. Well, they started at 11th Avenue, they went down to 10th Avenue. You'd have big trains that would come down all the way from above Manhattan. They'd drive down the west side along the Hudson River, and then eventually they would end up offloading most of their wares at a train station that we're going to see later on, actually part of it, that was at 30th Street. And then from there, passengers would actually board from the train, and some of them would end up crossing over to Grand Central Depot. Not a mistake, it was the one that was there before Grand Central Terminal, and it was a beautiful old building, actually more beautiful than Grand Central Terminal, although much less useful in many ways. And then the rest of all the supplies that you needed, all the things that were being shipped in and out of New York, would continue down along trains that were running directly on the street, the same grade as street level with no separation. And over time, this caused a lot of problems. At first, the first problem was that no one wanted to live around that area any longer as it started to grow and expand. But I'm skipping ahead of myself right now. Instead, let's walk a little bit and let me show you where the old Fort Gansevoort was. And then we'll talk more about trains. Yeah, Nikki, it's true. New York didn't have, the only remnants of the elevated train platforms here in New York is now the High Line, which originally, right, the High Line, well, built in, let's say, the real idea and concept for it starts in 1999, and then it's been opening in phases through the early 2000s. The West Side elevated train platform was an answer to this problem they were seeing along the 10th and 11th Avenue, and that doesn't come until the 30s, after a long time of battling for it. But it's, how long did this train run before it closed? Well, that's a really interesting question, Teague, and don't let me forget it. Tage, until I come back to it. But first I just want to show you this space right here, because this is where Fort Gansevoort used to be. Now that street that we were on before, Gansevoort, is named after a Revolutionary War colonel and hero of the Revolutionary War. And he, he had the fort that was built in this space that we're looking at right now, named after him. One of 4 forts that were actually created as a response to rising tensions in the early 1800s with the British. The British had absolutely whipped the pants off the revolutionaries, the freedom fighters, the rebels, terrorists, whatever you want to call the young American patriots, and had taken New York in 1776, chasing Washington out, and they actually used it as their headquarters during the Revolutionary War to fight the Americans. Knowing that tensions were rising, there was a decision that was made in 1811 to make sure that New York would not be taken by the British again. So they built 4 forts. One of them was Castle Clinton down at Battery Park. One of them was on Governor's Island. One of them is where the Statue of Liberty actually sits today. And the 4th of those forts is right here. So this is where Fort Gansevoort was built in 1811, 1812. It's never used because the British see the forts, and they end up instead deciding to head to Washington, D.C., where they burned down the White House very successfully. But New York is saved! Yay! And when they tear down, eventually, Fort Gansevoort, what they'll end up building in this space here down below us is a train depot in the early 1800s. That train depot will eventually be replaced by a market. And that's a key aspect to what this whole neighborhood is. Let me see if I can bring up a picture for y'all to show you a sense of what this area would have looked like back in the day. All right, hopefully that is showing up for you now. And you can get a feeling of it, that before we had refrigeration, before we have supermarkets, and before food consumption kind of changes, if you wanted to eat something, you had to go to either a local realtor or a local grocer, and usually those grocers were picking up their food from big markets, and people were coming in all night long from Connecticut and Long Island to deliver the food that would then be sold across these markets. Now, the train line that comes down and is able to drop food and pick up food and also all other sorts of industry stuff means that that it's really interesting for people to set up shop. By the way, just to say, this is like the last of the meat market, right? Like this whole district here, known as the meatpacking district, this is it. Like this is what's left over. When there used to be 250 different slaughterhouses, butchers, abattoirs, which are like, slaughterhouses, and meatpacking, areas. It was all scattered around here solidly by the 1940s and 1950s. The meatpacking district had kicked out a lot of the other industry that had moved to other spaces. But back in the day, it was the place to be, right? If you wanted to set up shop in New York in the mid 1800s, it was really great for you to be along this stretch of land along 10th and 11th. And lots of businesses end up moving in here because they say to themselves, you know what? We want to be able to take advantage of this train. And these trains, as you saw in that building that we started at just a second ago, that train line ran right through the building. Now, this is the elevated platform, but back before you built this elevated platform, you had trains running all along the street, and they could have little spurs. They would just come off the side of the spur and head into your factory or into your warehouse, so you can unload and offload train cars. And there's a testament to all of that, of course, what this originally is. If you look at this, how they've integrated the actual train lines into this park and walkway that we have today. So there's sort of this old testament to it. Now, I wonder if I can sneak over there. No, let's walk a little bit further first, and then I'll get a better view for you guys over here. So if we look over here towards our east right now, it gives us a good sense along Little West 12th Street, which I'm just going to show you. I know maybe I'm going a little bit nuts on these pictures today, but I did spend some time preparing it, so I might as well use them and show you guys a little bit how it looks. Now, what you're looking at here is a map of New York, and at the bottom of it, let me make it a little bit smaller. Well, no, not the city. Oh, no, I want this image to be a little bit smaller. Image be smaller. There it is. Thank you for bearing with me. All right, great. I didn't really do a good job, but all right, at the very top of this little mappy thing here, what you have is West 14th Street, and at the bottom of the mappy thing is what you have is Houston Street, right? And below Houston is where you get into Old New York. Back then, that was like New York that was really built up before 1811. In 1811, a really special thing happens in New York. They come up with the Commissioner's Plan. And the Commissioner's Plan basically creates the grid system in New York. So yeah, great, thanks, Bar. I appreciate the feedback on that. That is great, I love it. But now if you look over to where we are right now, which is over, like, here's my finger coming in, we're over here in this area, right? You can see that little West 12th Street is this weird angle, whereas 12th Street over towards like this area, coming in like over this way, it kind of curves and breaks down. And the reason for that is that this area of like northern Greenwich Village, if you will, it was already built before the Commissioner's Plan in 1811. They'd already spread out this way because Greenwich Village was like a retreat, like a vacation place to get away from the hustle and bustle of downtown New York, which was only like a 4-minute bike ride, but oh, there it was too crowded. So Greenwich Village, you'd escape from the smell and the hustle and the bustle, and then up into this area, kind of North Greenwich Village, if you will. They'd already built it up, so it didn't make they didn't want to tear it all down again. And that's why the streets here are still kind of weird. And that's why as we walk along the High Line itself is going to end up crossing back and forth a little bit over this mishmash of streets in our area. All right, so we've seen over to that. Oh wait, really quick, just worth just showing these buildings here again. Starting like this whole area is built up from like 1840s to 1900, and these awnings that you see above a lot of these buildings, right? These little kind of awning spaces, those are all mostly original, and they were there to help protect the wares that were being traded inside of those shops. But if we go back to like 1812, this was mostly farmland. That's why they could build the fort over here. And then by the 1840s, there's a guy named John Jacob Astor, who was originally like a fur trader, and he converts over to being a real estate mogul. Good for him. Probably the best choice. We can just look over there in the distance. We can say hello to New Jersey. Hello, New Jersey. How's it going in Jersey? Very good to see you. Okay, well, we're gonna keep on moving. There's lots of people around today. It's a great time for people watching. Oh wait, hold on a second. I gotta back out for a second because I didn't show you guys something that we have to look at real fast, which is this building right above us. There's just so much to talk about. This building right here is the Standard Hotel. And it is a pretty famous high-end hotel and worth taking a look at. In fact, why don't we walk along this way? And I'm going to cross over past the kids. Sorry, not doing the best camera work, but actually it's not the worst. This building is famous because A, it's really nice and a little bit pricey. It's a great hotel. It also is where a famous musician named Jay-Z got into a fight in an elevator at one point. That's the famous elevator fight location. And do I have a picture of it for you? Nope. Don't have a picture that I wanted to show you. Well, what I wanted to pull up there was just a picture of the United Nations building, because this building also is a clear kind of homage to the United Nations building. It has that kind of Le Corbusier look and feel as well. But what it's most famous for is that these windows here, as you look into it, you can actually, it's hard for you guys to see maybe a little bit, these big A windows, you can see right into what's going on. So when the building actually opens up, to start with, it becomes kind of famous for a certain type of guest, exhibitionists. So you might be down here having your coffee, And sure enough, you look up and there's a naked person in the window who's just full on naked, staring down at you, smiling. And that's what I know this hotel as. It's a little bit exhibitionistic. But we're gonna walk underneath it right now because the High Line passes right below. Below me right now, you have something else, which is the beer garden at the Standard. And would douchey be the wrong word? No, it's the right word. It's the right word. Okay, so what I want to show you as well here, this is kind of neat. Look at these benches as we walk by. These benches are showing you themselves what the High Line is like. Because you can see it's like an elevated train platform that's coming up. And then the bench itself kind of feels like train tracks. Neat, right? Oh, we got a model shoot going on here. Probably someone famous, not like me. I'm gonna walk by though and come over to this direction because I need to get close to the ocean. Because I want to show you guys some of the piers that are to the west of us along the Hudson River. Because if I take you guys back again to when John Jacob Astor is building up this area, making row houses, nice houses, brownstones actually, for wealthy people to come live in them. You know, it's a big movement to build, and people are relocating here. And then, because of the exploits of none other than Cornelius Vanderbilt, you end up having the depots built down in this area. And that changes things a lot for the people that were living here. Many of them start to leave because the depot is so convenient for industry. The industry starts to move in, and industry is like smelly. Come on, focus on the distance. Focus on the distance. All right, there we go. How about this? There we go. No, I can't. Yeah, that's perfect. I just put my hand underneath the netting. This pier over here that we're looking at right now is one of the many piers that would have lined the Hudson River. So you would have had ships bringing wares down the Hudson River, all the way from, and the question is, how long is the Hudson River? Hudson River is really, really long. It goes all the way up into upstate New York, and then eventually it connects to Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, that then will eventually allow you to connect all the way to Chicago. So if you wanted to ship something from London to Chicago, you had to go through New York City back in the 1800s to do it. And the guy that comes up with the idea to build a canal is none other than DeWitt Clinton. He's a guy I've talked about before. And DeWitt, who's the governor at that time, a previous mayor, he'd also been a senator, I think, for a short period of time, but didn't love it. He came back to the state because he wanted to work on state politics. DeWitt Clinton was the guy that builds the Erie Canal, which puts New York on the map for a lot longer than it was necessarily going to be. And the reason why I wanted to show you this particular pier is because two famous boats had been there at different times. And one of those boats is right, dun dun dun, here. This is the boat, there we go. This is the Carpathia. And the Carpathia is the boat that rescues the victims of the Titanic disaster. So this boat pulls up along this dock here where this metal grating that you were just looking at was. And it's where the 1,000 or so survivors of the Titanic disaster come off the boats, and they're greeted by literally tens of thousands of New Yorkers who are just grieving at the loss of this disaster, because we lost a lot of New Yorkers during the Titanic disaster. And one of those people that we lost was, well, two people were Ida and Isidore Strauss, and the Strauss couple were co-owners in the Macy's, the Macy's department store, and we actually went to their park on that Columbia University tour that we did. So there's another boat that also ended up here, which was this one, and this is the Lusitania. this particular boat sets sail and then is torpedoed by a German torpedo submarine launched, and this helps propel the U.S. into World War I. Ironically enough, the Carpathia was also torpedoed off the coast of Ireland. So, well, there you go. We'll be able to see where the Titanic was supposed to dock in a little bit, but we are continuing right now. And another great kind of view, an example of how the train would run into a building in front of us here. You really get a feeling for that.
You're literally like Jenna Gordon.
Yeah, that's right. We lost Jack. Although, like, really, Rose, like, there was so much room on that floating door. Jack couldn't have gotten in there too. You're right. Sorry about that, Jim. It's a U-boat. Good to see you, by the way, Jim. Now, I'm going to move, so I don't want to lose you guys as we cut underneath here, but maybe we'll just listen to this really fast. Sounds of New York. Okay. So, yeah, it is good, right? We get another still good feeling of how this area was all built up to be, well, after Astor's attempts to, first develop this area, and the depot comes in and the trains start driving people out, they still have people here, right? Because New York is growing by leaps and bounds throughout the 1800s. The population increases sixfold between 1850 and 1900. And then between 1880 and 1920, the New York's population goes from like 1.5 million people up to 4.5 million people almost. So you've got a ton of people that are moving to New York and are immigrating here at the same time as this being a really desirable location for industry to set up because it could use the train lines. This creates a real fight ultimately. Now, this particular building here, which is worth talking about, is the old American Can Company, and they made tins, like tin cans. So they had a monopoly at one point, actually, on tinning and cans in the U.S., which was a really good business for them. They did very well. Today, what you can see on the windows does not say American Can Company, but instead says Giorgio Armani. By the way, want to hear a funny story that I learned from a terrific tour guide here in New York named Tom Delgado, Tom DNYC, if you want to check out his YouTube channel, is that Giorgio Armani actually didn't get his start. You might have known this already. He didn't get his start until he was 40 years old. 40 years old, right? He was a window dresser. That's what he did. And then his boyfriend was like, "Hey, Giorgio, I got an idea. You should be a designer." And he goes, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you should be a designer." He goes, "Really?" He's like, "Well, I don't have any money." He's like, "You should sell your Volkswagen Bug and be a designer instead." And he was like, "All right, let's try that. We'll see if that works out." It worked out for him. It did okay. I still have hope. That's the point. Over here, what we can see is actually another cool pier. And this is where you can see it on the outside of it. The old Marine and Aviation Pier, Pier 57. It's actually all on top of floating concrete blocks. And it's the first building along the Hudson that had that. So it was kind of a special thing. And what I'm looking at over here now is none other than what some people will know as Chelsea Market. But what I know this building as is the National Biscuit Company. Originally, that's what it was, the National Biscuit Company. Now you wonder what the National Biscuit Company is? Nabisco. This is where Nabisco used to have their headquarters. And quite literally, that silver connection that you have here that connects the old tin company with Nabisco is because Nabisco bought this building and then it built this overpass to be able to move products back and forth across the street without having to take them down onto the road level. So So Nabisco did pretty well for themselves on that. And this space that we're walking through, again, remember that the train would run right through this space, right? Which was great for Nabisco because they could offload and load things. The train could stop, not blocking traffic. And if we look over in this direction, we can see another pretty cool aspect of the west side elevated platform, train platform here, which is there's a spur, right? It's called the South Spur. It actually goes into the building over here, connects into this other Nabisco building. And if we get close enough, I think I can probably show you guys it. We'll see if anyone yells at me. No one's yelling at me yet. We're just gonna go over here. And can I zoom in and see it? Let's see. Can you guys see that here? Right there? There's some letters there. They say NBC. That is not a television station. That is for the National Biscuit Company, NBC, Nabisco. Yep, that's the one. So when they built the train line into this space, this is actually where the original Nabisco ovens were that had first been set up here in 1890. And they had to tear those out to build the elevated train platform through the space. So we are literally right now walking over, the ghosts of sweet desserts. And in fact, a very special dessert item was invented here in 1912. Let me see if I can find it for you. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this before. The good old Oreo sandwich. Turned out that in the beginning, it was a sandwich. But eventually they were like, no, maybe not Oreo sandwich. Maybe we should call it a cookie instead. And sure enough, that's what we ended up with. So if you ever want to know where Oreo cookies were invented, they were right here. Probably, we think, in 1912, in this building, right? Pretty neat. Who would have guessed it? All right. See, guys, this is what happens when I have a little bit of time and I can put a little bit of time into these things. I can come in and I can give you guys some extra, get some pictures in here, right? And really show you the stuff. Right? National Biscuit Company. Totally, Jeanette, right? It is. It does. It feels very, it sounds like a Disney, company. Something that Sven and Christoph would be like, hey, Elsa, what do you think? Should we make a National Biscuit Company here? Like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. All right, more people watching coming up, so keep on with that. Ooh, if we can make it all the way, wait a second. Oh my God, it's already 42 minutes? Oh, I completely misplanned how long this tour was gonna take. It's because it's a little bit loose right now, that's why. This is a great place to be able to watch stuff from. So what folks are doing here is you can come, sit, hang out, and you can watch up 10th Avenue, right? And the neat thing about 10th Avenue is that 10th Avenue used to be called Death Avenue because hundreds of people got hit by trains running up and down 10th Avenue. And that was part of that issue of these trains that were just on the roads, going from 11th, cutting over, and then coming down 10th to be able to supply all these factories. Now, the city was up in arms about, of course, the loss of life, but and the really sad thing is a lot of them were school kids that were just rushing to try to beat the trains. But on top of that, you also had the issue of, can you imagine a 10-car train stopping on the road? You think traffic's bad in New York right now? Imagine a 10-car train blocking crosstown traffic. And that's what was happening. So there was a reason to put to elevate the train from the train company side. And eventually the city coughs up the money to be able to do that. But before that happens, good old Vanderbilt and those folks say, I've got another idea. Before we have to invest the money on that, let's try doing something else. And what they did was, no joke, they had Cowboys. And the Cowboys were called the West Side Cowboys. and they would ride in front of, or they'd ride their horses in front of the trains, waving red flags as the train would ring a bell to try to discourage people from trying to beat the train. But you know, New Yorkers, right? I mean, we're in a rush. We got to keep going. We can't wait for a train. We gotta make it. So, so there's one of those cowboys. Let me show you guys another one here, just to give you a feeling of it, that it wasn't just like a one-off. And now I know some of you guys are thinking, like, cowboys waving flags, it sounds like a more modern kind of Christopher Street Day parade over here, and like meatpacking and Tribeca. But no, these are historic cowboys. And the last cowboy would ride his horse. Cyclone was the name of the horse. The name of the cowboy, I have to look at my notes to be able to pull it out. I think it was like, I want to say John Wayne, but it's not, right, of course. I think it was like Robert Wade or something. And he rode Cyclone down here. All those horses end up having a very peaceful rest of their lives at like a riding training school. So nothing bad happened to them. See you guys later. Take care. So let's continue on our walking tour. I had some nice people listening in there at that point. They were very sweet. So, yeah. So finally, there's enough political protest, and people are like being like, this is not okay, right? That people who are going, just like living in the community and trying to go to the market, getting hit by trains, the funny thing is that the same thing had been happening over on the east side of town. And there used to be trains that would run like up like Park Avenue. And it was just that in those parts of town, they had more money, right? This was largely an immigrant community that was moving into this area. And why? Because it was where all the light industrial and heavy industrial was. There was an ironworks right over here, and paint factories, turpentine, slaughterhouses, a lot of stuff going on. It wasn't the most desirable place, and these people just didn't have as big a voice, especially not against Cornelius, the Commodore Vanderbilt, who was so uber wealthy, having monopolized all trains in and out of New York. If you wanted to come to New York or leave New York or ship something in or out on a train, you had to go through the Vanderbilts to be able to do it. No wonder Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney still had so much cash. Okay, so just worth pointing over here, one more pier. This is part of the Chelsea Piers today, which is like a massive entertainment and recreational space. But where you can see that kind of netting here, this is where the Titanic was supposed to arrive. And then instead, like I said, didn't arrive on time, came a few days later. The survivors came a few days later. Yeah, what are you going to do? Worth just pointing out this lady, and that is the captain of the Carpathia, being awarded a special prize, acknowledgement for having gone and saved so many people's lives. That woman who's giving it to him is actually a star from the era. Her name was, I want to say Molly Tuttle, but that might be not her name. Molly Brown. Margaret Brown. That was her name, I think. I'm not sure. But she was one of the people on the ship. And if you watch the good old movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and the woman who stars across from Kate Winslet, she's the one, Molly Brown. Thank you, Nikki. Good. I got it before I saw your text message, by the way. Just kidding. I'm proud of myself. Molly Brown was the one in the movie who was saying, please, let's take these half-empty lifeboats from the Titanic and go back and save other passengers from the water. And she could not convince the men who were in the boat to allow her to do that. So, well, not everyone was saved. Kind of cool view out in this direction here. We can see, first of all, kind of neat graffiti, but then above that, just to give you guys an orientation of where we are, that's Midtown right up there. It's the Empire State Building, that beautiful Art Deco building there on 34th Street, kind of in the direction that we're headed. Yes, that was Kathy Bates. Good call. You guys know your stuff. It makes me proud. It's a smart crowd. Keep me on my toes. These condominiums here, beautiful condominiums. This building, which stretches on both sides of the High Line, is the Lantern House. That's what we're looking at here. And we're going to end up looking over here as well. Just beyond the Lantern House, which you can see here, there's another building which is just worth pointing out. I can't get a great view of it for you, but that building behind it, that is the IAC building. And the IAC building is the home to both Newsweek and Match.com. It's also a Frank Gehry building, which is pretty neat. IAC, I think it's like Interactive Company is what it stands for. The IAC building looks suspiciously like a giant iceberg, which seems like poor taste considering it's right across from the docks where the Titanic was supposed to land. So, yeah. All right, look, how about this? First time I'm going to do it, I'm going to pull out my notes really quick because I haven't even touched them yet, which is probably a good thing for you guys because if I actually got my notes out, we'd be way too deep in here. So let me just hit us up with some dates. So 1920s, where those West Side Cowboys started up. Yeah, these are really cool. I mean, would you guys want to live in a building where people could like quite literally just like look into your window all the time? Tell me in chat. I don't know how I would do it. I don't think I could. I guess the High Line does close at night though, so you wouldn't have people here at night looking in, but nonetheless. Yeah. So none of these buildings, these newer looking buildings, were here, but the building looks like it was built, if it looks like it was built after the 1950s, then well, it's, it's not the original meatpacking district. That's and in fact, during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, you weren't building anything new around here. There wasn't investment going on. Not until a little bit later, when you do have, of course, a real move into this area after the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when so much of the industry is left. The general demise of New York that takes place starting really by the 50s with Eisenhower, who wisely starts investing heavily into the interstate highways. Interstate highways just mean that you bypass New York, and New York loses a lot of its power and its importance when those highways come into place. Also really bad for New York is the advent of refrigeration, or not New York in general, but for this district, the advent of refrigeration. Part of the reason why you had this meatpacking district here was that what you actually had was like a lot of cows over in New Jersey, and those cows would be brought across the river when you needed to slaughter them because you didn't have good refrigeration, and hence you'd only want to kill the cows when the proper time kind of came to do so. So let's take a quick look over here, and yes, where's my guy? Clement Clarke Moore. That's what I want to talk about. Clement Clarke Moore is the gentleman who is the reason why we have this great theological building here. And Clement Clarke Moore was the grandson of a gentleman who originally named this area Chelsea, named after the Chelsea Pensioners Hospital in London, where retired army veterans would go, and it wasn't really a hospital. I guess there was a hospital there, but they'd go and they'd live there. And this whole neighborhood around here at one point was owned by this one family. And when the time came by the late 1880s, that the grid system was clearly in place and clearly forcing them to sell off the land, and it was all going to be developed into plots. Clement Clarke Moore insisted that this building was built on his apple orchard, which is why we have this great theological building here. The other thing that we have from that gentleman is a specific poem which starts with "'Twas the night before Christmas," and all through the house. Not a something could be heard. Not a stirring, not even a stirring, not even a mouse. You know the poem. You know the poem. Before that, we didn't really have Santa Claus, right? And it was a big part of his doing that we end up getting Santa Claus in the first place. That story of Saint Nick, and it wasn't part of our tradition yet. In New York, you had tons of people from all different places, from all different cultures and countries, who were melting potting here and mishing together. And there's a move during Clement Clarke Moore's moment of time to push that. We're going to talk about him again in a little bit, because it's actually Tilly Hart who was living in his house and was the greatest holdout. Wasn't living in his house, living in the house that he used to live in, like 50, 60 years earlier. And she was the greatest holdout for New York, a real David and Goliath story. We're going to talk about that again when we reach the London Terrace apartments. All right, but right now, tons of beautiful stuff to look at here as we go through this vegetation. Go vegetarian, says Lorraine Musha. Well, if you do like plants, then this is a great spot for you to be in, because we have over 210 different varietals of plants that we are walking by as we go up the High Line. Yeah, most of them are indigenous. The vast majority of them are indigenous plants. And a lot of them were just growing up here when this is actually kind of interesting. You guys know the Manhattan Project, right? Manhattan Project here in New York, Oppenheimer building the bomb. They had like 3 tons of uranium stored in this building for a long time. So if you're feeling a little funky, itchy right now, it's because that used to have uranium stored in there during the Manhattan Project. True story. Okay, how about this building over here? It's a Roman Catholic church. But take a look. We are at eye level with it. I'm just going to lean over real quick to show you. Well, it goes down that way. And here is the church windows. So you can imagine sitting in church service. And right now you've got us walking by. But this was built after the elevated train platform was already here. So they knew what they were doing, and they built the windows high enough so that, strangely enough, you'd be above the platform, right? That was the idea. One of the real downsides of elevated train platforms was that they blocked out light for people below. You couldn't see as much all of a sudden. But the advantage, of course, meant that people didn't get hit by the trains. So definitely a positive trade-off, right? I haven't seen any lilacs yet, Shannon. And there's a holly bush here. That's kind of neat. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Or a holly tree? Is that what that is? I don't know. I see red. Thank gosh that Jim's watching. He can tell me. Oop, sorry about that. Guys, we're not going to get to Hudson Yards today. We're not even that close yet. So maybe I'll just walk, tell a couple less stories, and show you guys at least until we get to Hudson Yard. Great views, and that's the real point of the High Line. It wants us to be able to see the city as we walk along. It wants us to view it. It's our integration. Thanks, Jim. It was Holly. Thank you. How does it smell right now? You know what I mostly smell is right now I smell like ramen coming from that ramen shop down there. Guess what? Doesn't work so well to try to film through netting. I've definitely discovered that on this tour. There's so much construction going on around us. You've got all of these sidewalk bridges around to make sure that bits of facade don't whack us in the head, which is smart. This building that we're coming up on the left-hand side, going to my notes, is HL23. That's that futuristic, robotic-looking apartment building, HL23. And on the other side, much less futuristic, bum, 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 bum. There it is. It's none other than those London Terrace Gardens right here. And this row of houses that gets developed they start trying to develop it by 1929. It's finally completed in 19, well, they actually start building it much before 1929. They complete it in 1929, shortly before the stock market crash. In 1931, 2 years after it's completed, it goes, the builder, a guy by the name of Mandel, ends up filing for bankruptcy and going out of business. But at one point, this was the largest apartment complex anywhere in the world, at least rumored to be. And this is where our friend Tilly Hart was living with her 2 dogs. And she manages to hold off the developers from tearing up the brownstone that would have actually looked a lot like the buildings on this side of the street, if you will. So you imagine all of this was also all of this. Yeah, Tilly Hart lived in good old Clement Clarke Moore's house that he'd originally lived in himself before he moved on. So yeah, gorgeous, never-ending kind of rolling apartment building here, but from 1929. So pretty neat. Oh, here we have a piece of artwork. There's artwork dotting all around the High Line as you go. This particular piece is called Retainer. Go figure. Never would have guessed. What could that have been? Yep, it's a retainer. There it is. One last look at those beautiful old brownstones. I mean, you think about it, those are from, like, those have got to be 1870s, 1880s. So, New York, I mean, New York's been around a long time, right? It's been here since the 1600s. But New York does such a good job of tearing things down and building new things up that even this High Line was, within a few decades, this elevated train platform was out of date. They didn't build it until 37, but by the 50s, certainly by the 60s, there wasn't much going on here any longer. It wasn't so important. In fact, in 1980, the last train runs along what used to be these train tracks. And according to legend, it had 3 cars only, and the cars were full of frozen turkeys. Say what you will about New York. So frozen turkey cars, and that was it. And then after that, after 1980, wasn't being used anymore, and the result was it started to become overgrown. The whole neighborhood had all these abandoned buildings, so it was really falling into disrepair, and less people were coming here to live or to work, and instead they were coming here to party. So the area of meatpacking, and which we've definitely left behind at this point, it's below us now, but Chelsea as well becomes a big nightclub and party scene in the most official ways. Raves both underground and above ground, up on this elevated train platform space itself, as well as a lot of prostitution, specifically transvestite prostitution, as it kind of gets that reputation. So Robert De Niro in the movie Cruising was down here in this area. How long is the High Line walk? That's a good softball question. Should be one I could knock out of the park. Can I go with 1.3 miles and say I'm not sure? I'm going to go with 1.3 miles and say I am not sure. What I am sure of is that this building right here is a Cass Gilbert building. Dun dun dun. Cass Gilbert. Well, if you don't know Cass Gilbert, no problem. He built a couple of buildings that I quite like. He built the Woolworth building on Broadway. Cass also did the Alexander Hamilton Customs House, where we start our free walking tours in New York by Bowling Green. although Daniel Chester French does the statues directly in front of that Beaux-Arts style building, which today is the Museum of the Native American. What else? Oh yeah, he did the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. So Cass Gilbert's pretty famous. He's a star. And this is one of his buildings. Pretty drab though, right? It's all one color, beige building. But Cass himself said, apparently, I know that this monocolored building isn't like as beautiful as the Beaux-Arts style buildings I've done before. This was an expanded grocer's business, a grocery that had actually gotten its start down on Maiden Lane in Lower Manhattan. And they'd done well enough that by 1937, they were able to pay Cass Gilbert to build this building for them. And when the sunlight catches it, it actually is absolutely gorgeous, even though here in this kind of modern construction style, it doesn't necessarily show it to you. Whoop, sorry about that, my friends. Oh, this is a great building down here too. Oh gosh, last one, and then I guess we gotta keep speeding along. Oh God, what is the name? I can't remember the name of this bloody building. So what an awful way for me to go out, but here it is back in the 1940s. And it's just I just love this old building and its ability to just add a little bit of form to the function. You would have had train lines from the West End Highway over there, also going directly into this beautiful building. But look at those rounded edges and the kind of the natural incense to it. And it's a mixed use building, but not residential, mixed use offices and light industry, but still absolutely beautiful. And I love that they really cared to show that and make it just nice. It's one of those little things you see as you go along. All right, where are we? Coming up on our left, this building is not that descript, but interestingly has had a lot of history to it. It has been a paint factory. It was a corrugated cardboard box manufacturer. It's gone through lots and lots of different iterations. And Parvati, sorry to butcher your name, but I also wanted to say hello back to you really quick and say thanks for being there. So, all right, we've got like another five minutes or so, and then I'm gonna let you guys go because I've gone longer than I expected. It is my first time doing this kind of tour walkthrough, so I haven't said it all out loud. Sorry that it's a little bit spotty at times. Kind of cool just to point down here for Howard Stern fans. There's Scores, the strip club that Howard Stern would always talk about on his morning show. Not so interesting. I wanted to talk about this building here instead over on this side, and this is the McKittrick Hotel. McKittrick Hotel is where Sleep No More is, or was. Right now it's suspended because of pandemic, of course, but Sleep No More is this awesome show in New York that I've been to like 4 or 5 times. And would always take friends to, where you wear these white masks as you walk around through the building, and they do a loose reenactment of Shakespeare, where there are like 7 or 8 performers, and they don't speak. Occasionally they'll lip sync music that's playing in the background, and they move up and down through 4 or 5 stories of this building, this old hotel, which never actually launched as a hotel because when it was about to open, World War II struck, and then the hotel failed. So it was just an empty building for a long time, like a lot of things in this area. And you during the performance, you follow these. You just pick an actor that you're going to follow, and you follow them through the hotel, running up and down stairs, going in and out of rooms, and then they meet other actors and they gather in different places. Sleep No More, really cool. On the rooftop, it has a like a terrace bar, like a rooftop bar called Gallo Green. So, Susanna, hello, buonvenido. It is not open at night. They do close it, I believe, at 9 p.m. is when the end of the evening High Line is. So there you go. Okay, so the building that we're coming up on in a second, I told you we'd see it earlier on in the tour. It is the old depot building that used to be here, and it was the 30th Street Depot. And the 30th Street Depot, where trains would, you'd have to get off the train and they'd offload people, and those people would head over to Grand Central Depot, or you'd end up, you'd be goods and cattle or other stuff, and you'd be loaded. Your train cars would be sent down further down to maybe St. John's Depot or to one of the many factories or piers along the way. But this building right here today is like the massive mail processing building in New York, and I think it's called the Morgan Processing Center. So all mail that comes in and out of New York goes through this building. But it's a very cool building, firstly because, let's see if this can work. If I can make that happen. Trying to do a photo right now. Here we go. All right, there you go. You're gonna accept that as the photo for a second. So this is a bird's eye view of the top of this building right here, right? It is the largest green space roof in New York. It's like a massive green space up there. And it's actually, in its own right, kind of like a mini High Line, if you look at it. But that is not the main reason why I wanted to talk about that building. The main reason why I want to talk about this building is because of this guy. And for those of you who don't recognize this man here, this is none other than Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States of America, who was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. He first came to New York and arrived at this train station here directly in front of us. He arrived here right after his inauguration, and he comes early in 1861. And then it's from this train station, now the postal processing plant, that after having sat in state for a few days in downtown New York, oops. Oh, come on, open up now. Big fat fingers I have. And then this is where he'll depart and go on his long tour around the United States, his farewell tour, so to say. And he departs from here, and 2 days after he departs from here, John Wilkes Booth is killed in, I believe, Virginia. Jim, is that where they catch up to John Wilkes Booth? I feel like they get him in Virginia. This is kind of like where Lincoln begins and ends his New York relationship as president, which is kind of interesting. Well, which is very interesting for me. And but I can't end on that note. Yes, thank you, Jim. Virginia it was. John Wilkes Booth, who was an actor, actually played a lot in New York. He was often on the stage here. He wasn't as famous as his older brother, and there's a theater named after him, the Booth Theater, which is on Broadway. But his older brother was like the most famous Shakespearean American actor at the time. So sort of a letdown that his younger brother became so much more famous for murdering the president. So there you go. Well, we're coming up to the end of the High Line, and that means that we're going to end our tour in just a second because we've gone for longer than I promised that we would go, and I don't want to hold you guys hostage, even though I love you guys. Look at that. Jim writes to us on Facebook, John Wilkes Booth was arrested for assault in Charleston. I'm assuming you don't mean me, right? You're referring to John Wilkes Booth. I hope, Jim. So I've tried something new today and used a lot more historical photos, and I hope that added something to it. I know that we've had feedback from folks that they like it, and it does add a little bit more time. And I feel weird because I don't know. I think the next time I do this tour, I'm going to probably do it in front of real live people and not be able to use the photos the same way. But who knows? Maybe I'll make this a regular virtual. I definitely want to do it again at least once, now that I've gotten a good feel for it. And yeah, here we are, coming up on where we're going to wrap. We're going to take a quick look at good old Thomas Heatherwick's The Vessel, here in what is today maybe a little bit tone deaf, this Hudson Yards space with all this incredibly high-end, expensive real estate for offices, which are now empty because everyone works from home and probably will continue to do so for a while, full of very, very high-end shops. This section of land has been the most discussed area in New York for decades as to what they were going to do here. And there were tons of plans going back like 50 years about what to actually do in this space. And in the end, it's become, expensive offices, high-end restaurants, and watches of Switzerland. So, and lastly, it's also this thing, The Vessel. Yes, Thomas Heatherwick. Now, The Vessel is an amorphic name. No one is saying that this is definitely going to be the Yes Bar. Thank you for helping me end on an uplifting note. This is the place that people have been jumping off of. I'll say it in a funny voice, that way it won't sound so terrible. But yes, no, unfortunately, some people, it's been desperate times for a lot of folks. Pre-pandemic, there were several suicides from up here in The Vessel. The question is this going to be the name of this thing? Are people going to be calling it something else in the near future? Probably. It's not beloved, but you know what? The Eiffel Tower wasn't beloved to begin with either. So maybe one day, Thomas Heatherwick, you will be the new Eiffel for us. And until then, I've got to say, I'm disappointed with some aspects of Hudson Yards, which, despite being the not wealthiest part of town, it's a really high-end, expensive space. So I haven't been up inside, so I don't know. I haven't done it yet. Well, why don't we walk down to the Hudson, and I'll take this opportunity to say thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming back and hanging out. All those massive donations that you were planning to give me, because this was so much fun, save them, right? Hold on to them, okay? Use them for another guide in the future. And just think, when you're going on another one of these virtual tours, be like, I was gonna give Chris $5, but I'm just gonna give this guy 10 instead. Like, that would make me very happy. So please do it. I would love to hear from you what you think this building should be called. If not The Vessel, I'm taking submissions. And Sarah says the pine cone. I mean, it looks like a pine cone. I don't know if that's what you'd call it. Maybe you call it the sticky cone. But I would love you to, as you say goodbye, just give me what you would call this thing if you had to name it something. And then maybe we'll submit it to the city. We'll talk to de Blasio on his way out and ask him if we could call it instead the Sticky Wicket or the ananas. Oh, ananas, like a pineapple. I like that. It's a good one. The beehive. Oh, the hive. There we go. That's a good one. I like that too. The hive. Pagoda Real. Yeah, it's not a bad option. Could be that. Pine cone, yeah. Exactly right, Nikki. The show must go on. I mean, I'm just too much of a liberal to, like, it was disturbing and confusing to me, but like, I just fundamentally believe that if those kids felt like they needed to mess around with me and try to run off of my phone and mess up our live stream, it's because like something bad happened to them in their lives and they're struggling with it. So, you know, can't hate on people that are going through a hard time. I'm going through a hard time and I get it, you know, like people make mistakes. So anyway, they're well forgiven. I forgot about them almost. Yeah, show goes on, exactly right. Let's just leave you guys with our final farewell. Oh wait, there's one more thing that I wanted to ask you to do. If you could, after this tour is done, if you haven't yet gone to a previous YouTube video that we've done on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, if you haven't made a comment on a video, if there's a video there that you haven't yet commented on that you did watch, please go back and just make one comment. Doesn't have to be one of my videos. Please don't make it one of my videos. Make it one of the other guys' videos. But just leave a comment, you know, that you thought it was good, you liked it, give it a heart, thumbs up on the video, and that'll help us reach more people. So you're helping with the marketing if you do that. So please do that. That does make a difference. And as is normal for me these days, I'm just going to stop talking, let you guys kind of head off, and I'm going to walk over towards my favorite pizza place and get a slice before I head home. So Pizza Suprema over on 31st and 8th Avenue. And I will show you as we do, just look at this, train lines, all these trains, right? It really was a train yard. Underneath us, actually, you have a whole infrastructure down there of tunnels. They were tunnels for cows down below us when they were like, oh, we've got to make sure that these cows don't get hit by moving trains, you know? Not the kids. We're not going to worry about the school children. We're just going to worry about the cows. But sure enough, there are all these underground tunnels down there. And I will, with that, say farewell. I'll walk and then show you guys the end of a little bit of New York scenery without having to. I'll let you guys say goodbye. And maybe I'll say thank you, Jim. Appreciate it, brother. I will stop talking history and let you guys just enjoy a little bit of time in New York, seeing what post-pandemic New York looks like as we very quickly, maybe too quickly, but very quickly embrace the end of this incredibly strange and hard times that we've all, if you're watching this, managed to survive. But it is always important at times like that, like this, to balance it with thoughts of those who didn't make it through for one reason or another, either because of COVID or other COVID-related issues. And by doing that, remembering the people that we've lost, just remember that we still have each other, and we have ourselves, we have our health, and that is something to celebrate. So you guys are the best. Absolutely enjoyed this. Couldn't have done it without you. You drove me and inspired me to work to put this together and learn an incredible amount of history in a very short period of time. You're very welcome, Rebecca and Bar and Lene and Jill. Always good to see you. Take care, guys. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you to Nikki and Ross for helping inspire me to do this specific tour and walk right now. And we're gonna have to do another one in the area because I didn't really tell you anything about Hudson Yards. We just gotta go. Marta, gracias para ti. You can also sensitize your phone. Okay, but I don't understand what that means. Sensitize your phone just in case your health. Explain that to me, because I'm curious. I'm always looking to learn new things about my phone and ways to make better things. Oh yeah, Shannon, there was an ice cream truck back there. Sorry about that. Sanitize. Oh, sanitize my phone. Oh yeah, from the guys that grabbed it. I mean, I've gotten both my shots, and I grew up on a farm as a kid. I feel like I have a pretty strong immune system. COVID COVID was the first time I'd gotten sick in forever. And I'd never been sick like that. But, yeah. Oh, Andreas Pfeiffer. Hey, buddy. Thanks. Thanks for being there. I appreciate you joining in. And I will. I will enjoy the pizza. In fact, I'll probably post a picture of the pizza up on Facebook after this so you guys can also see it. Yeah, clean. Thank you, Bar. That's what we thought. Sanitize. All right. Okay, I'm going to end the tour. Goodbye, guys. It was really fun. Bye, Diana. Oh, Cynthia. Goodbye. Hamira, thank you. I will enjoy. Yeah, just a slice. Just a pre-bike slice. Get me back to the east side.
Are you sure? I don't even know. He's going positive. I don't know. There's another person who's not another.
Heading on down to the land of the pine, on my way into North Carolina. Look up the road, I pray to God I see headlights. We're walking down south now for 17 hours, picking me a bouquet of dogwood flowers. And I'm hoping for Raleigh so I can see my baby tonight. So rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me.
But I would love to just see what happens.
Oh, rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. Well, I've been running from and I was born to be a fiddler in an old town string band. My baby plays the guitar, I pick a banjo now. Oh, North Country winters kept on getting me down. I lost my money playing poker, so I had to up and leave. I ain't heading back, living that old life no more. So rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Oh, wanna rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. B&H guys, by the way, amazing, amazing shop. Hey, mama, rock me. Oh, welcome to the South, out of Roanoke. I met a trucker down from Philly, had a nice long toke. He was heading west to the Cumberland Gap. and Johnson City, Tennessee. Oh, I gotta make my way back and bait for the sun. I hear my baby calling my name, and I know that she's the only one. And if I die in Raleigh, well, at least I will die free. Oh, go on and rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Go on and rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. That's right, Palmyra. You just can't keep me quiet. This, by the way, is the New Pennsylvania station that we've been walking by, which is pretty cool. And that's why I was feeling like a little train song as we were going. Because, you know, I mean, it's not the old Penn Station, which of course was the first real competitor to Vanderbilt's monopoly on New York City. But this is where the Amtrak trains come now, the Moynihan Train Hall. Moynihan. I'm going to officially stop when we get to the pizza place. It's right around the corner, so there's a block to go. And yes, it's true. Nick's Cathedral up ahead. Nikki spotted it. We're getting over to like Penn Station and Madison Square Garden, baby. MSG. I only really know one other song. You guys want one more song as we wrap around the corner? If I get a +1, can I see a +1 for a song? You guys don't want to listen to me sing anymore. It's not even fair to you to make you listen to me. So Jay-Z, you know why his name's Jay-Z? Same reason why my name's Ace. That's right. It's because he lived near the Jay-Z train track or train station, subway station. Jay-Z, out in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn. All right, so we'll do a college song. Bright college years with pleasures rife, the shortest, gladdest years of life. How swiftly are ye gliding by? Oh, why doth time so quickly fly? The seasons come, the seasons go. The earth is green or white with snow. But time and change shall not avail to break the friendships formed at Yale. You never would have guessed that's where I went to school. In after years should troubles rise to cloud the blue of sunny skies, how swift will seem through memory's haze those happy golden bygone days. So let us strive that ever we shall make these words our watch cry be. Where'er upon life's seas we sail, for God, for country, and for Yale. Whew. Felt inappropriate walking by the train station at that moment singing that specific song, because there are a lot of people who looked rough, like they were sleeping rough tonight. That didn't feel good. But the song was fun to sing nonetheless. So go Bulldogs. Bow, wow, wow. All right, pizza time. Show you guys the space, and then I'm gonna get out of your face. When you come to New York, if you want a famous slice, you're gonna come to Pizza Suprema. There's the spot. And I'll tell you right now, you come here, just get a cheese slice. You don't need anything but a cheese slice at this place. This place is like the amazing cheese. This is the amazing cheese slice place. because you don't need to put anything on this slice in order to be able to make it a delicious slice. You don't need to cover it with pepperoni or anything else. All you need is cheese. This place right here, it's the one. So guys, I'm gonna go in and have a slice. This is the one that you gotta go and check out. That's it. It's an actual New York slice. Yeah. It's like a real slice of New York pizza, and it's great. I mean, look, maybe they'll let me show you in the window real quick. Let's see. We'll just do this. We'll just do this. We're still inside, outside. All right, I'm turning it off now, guys. Enjoy. See you later. Be well.